Israel has killed 2 more journalists who were doing their jobs in Gaza, trying to report on the ongoing genocide there. These 2 were they were 27-year-olds and worked for Al Jazeera. Ismail Al-Ghoul and his cameraman Rami Al-Rifi. They had been reporting for the last 10 months from Gaza, and they were explicitly covering the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, the leader of Hamas, by visiting where Haniyeh was from, which was a refugee camp in the north of Gaza. Here is one of their colleagues, also of Al Jazeera, reporting on what happened to them.
They were directly targeted in a white car where they were killed. They were wearing their press jackets. They were covering the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh. They were on their way back from his house in Al-Shati refugee camp, and that's how the Israeli forces targeted them.
So a reporter in Gaza who had actually spent much of the day with the 2 Al Jazeera crew members told CNN on Wednesday he was 300 meters away from the missile that hit their vehicle. Again, that white vehicle that we're talking about. Video from the scene shows the burnt out shell of a small saloon car that appears to have been targeted from above. Al-Ghoul was wearing a press flak vest, as their colleague said when he was killed. He had not seen his wife and 2-year-old daughter Zaina, who were displaced in central Gaza, in 10 months. He wrote on X in June, "These days are not like any other. Zaina began running, talking, asking questions. She was growing up without me seeing her." And just more about the character of Ismail, here is his colleague who continues.
I had this call with Ismail a couple of days ago, and we were talking about helping Palestinians sick in the northern parts and trying to find a way to evacuate to the southern parts of the Gaza Strip. Ismail was not only a journalist, but he was trying his best to help everyone in the north, to find food for everyone in the north, and he was just a very kind person. And despite the fact that we did not see each other for 10 months after being separated from the southern parts and the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, we're still in contact, talking to each other about everything and helping each other to air and to report about the Gaza Strip and this ongoing genocide.
Hey, don't scroll away. Come back. Because before the video continues, we just want to urge you to lend your support to TYT. You power our honest reporting. You do it at tyt.com/team, and we love you for it.
So you can hear the heartbreak in her voice. As of July 31st, at least 113 journalists and media workers have been killed since October in Gaza. In Gaza and the occupied West Bank. 108 of whom were Palestinian. That's according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. But Cenk, look, we have got a week of targeted strikes from Israel, not just Haniyeh in Tehran, but a leader of Hamas, but a Hezbollah leader in Beirut, and now 2, Al Jazeera press journalists wearing their press jackets. It seems like Israel can do targeted strikes if they want to. And yet we've got 40,000 plus civilians or people who've been killed in Gaza. Of course, Israel says they're mostly Hamas. It's just amazing how they can actually target people they want to kill when they want to.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the reporters first, then all their bombings throughout the Middle East. And I agree with Franny on that point, and I think that's the connective tissue. So first on the reporters, Israel has killed more reporters in this war than all other countries in all other conflicts combined. And their main defense is our military is totally incompetent. A bunch of morons, can't ever hit the right target. They meant to hit terrorists, but golly gee, they hit the obvious white van with press all over the flak jackets and et cetera, et cetera. Like every time they hit someone super obviously press and they go, oh, golly gee, did we murder another journalist trying to uncover our wrongdoing? They sound like the Russians. Oh, that was another journalist that fell out of their window. They just tripped. They tripped and a bathtub fell on them. Okay, if you believe them, you're just saying, okay, I don't care what's true. It just bothers me emotionally that the country I support is murdering journalists at a record pace. And so they're not doing it accidentally. Honestly, I mean, I'm trying so hard not to call worse adjectives, but you would be at a minimum enormously naive if you think the IDF accidentally killed more journalists than all other countries combined, okay? So it's preposterous. And that's why I say, look, I think tourism to Israel should be zero, none. They're in the middle of this war. They keep killing anyone who disagrees with them, anyone who uncovers anything. I mean, do you agree with everything Israel said? If you don't, and you go there, you're playing with your life. So look, they say, oh, Israel's the only democracy in the Middle East. What do you mean democracy? They imprisoned 5.5 million Palestinians and they've been doing it for nearly 60 years now. So it's a democracy inside Israel. It's a dictatorship in the occupied territories. So I'm not going to go to a dictatorial country who murders journalists and Muslims on the regular. Okay, so I would never go to Israel as long as it's run by these right-wingers, this war is happening or the occupation's happening. They're basically saying, if you try to cover us honestly, we will kill you. And Shireen Abu Akleh was assassinated. They shot her in the neck between her helmet and her flak jacket when she had press credentials. Even America had to admit, yeah, that one's kind of awkward. It looks like they murdered her, right? Because they obviously murdered her.
They lied for like a year before about it, and they said it was Palestinian militant fire that killed her. She was in the Jenin refugee camp, again, covering the ongoing onslaught of the people in the West Bank too, who are at the whim, at the mercy of insane settler violence, in addition to the IDF, in addition to the checkpoints, in addition to the inability to live a normal life. So yeah, and they just wait. They just wait for all the critics to just pipe down a little bit, and then they're like, oopsie, we did do that. No, they do it on purpose.
But there's good news, Franny, which is that, look, I've been covering this for a quarter of a century, right? And in the old days, which was all the way up until this particular conflict, Israel would say, what do you mean? That's a dirty Arab. Of course they're a terrorist. And American media would go, dirty Arab, terrorist, not human, don't worry about it. Obviously, it was an accident. They always miss, Israel always misses. And the savages had it coming anyway, right? By the way, that Netanyahu speech was the most racist speech that's ever happened in Congress, where he's like, we are civilization and the Muslims are uncivilized. So let's join me together in murdering them, okay? Sickening. But these days, when you see those pictures, for a lot of Americans, because we broke mainstream media's propaganda, they look at them and go, well, they do look like reporters and they do look like human beings. And it does look like Israel murdered them. Well, that's winning, at least in terms of being able to wake the American public up to how dictatorial and authoritarian and awful this current Israeli government is. Okay, so now let's talk about how they're trying to start a war and make us pay for it, both in blood and treasure. So they say, well, Ismail Haniyeh, he's one of the leaders of Hamas. Of course we have to murder him. He's one of the Hamas terrorists, one of the leaders. Okay, I got you. You find him in Gaza, I get it, you're in the middle of a war. You're gonna go assassinate someone in the middle of Iran and you don't think they're gonna retaliate? Or you think, who cares? I want them to retaliate. I just bombed Beirut. I just did an assassination in the middle of Tehran. How many other capitals do I have to kill people in before you get the memo? I'm trying to start a giant war in the Middle East, okay? And by the way, these same people would say, well, of course you killed the Hamas leaders. And if Hamas had killed Ben Gvir or Smotrich or Netanyahu in the middle of Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, they say, oh my God, the bloody terrorist. How could they do this to our leaders? Well, you just did it to their leader. So which one is it? What's our standards here? So look, all I want you to be is principled. I don't mind whichever side you go on. If you say, hey, of course you should be able to kill Haniyeh, and of course you should be able to kill Netanyahu. They're both the leaders in this war, and that's not terrorism at all. And all of the cabinet of Israel is super fair game. And Hamas should be able to kill them no matter where they are. In America, in Iran, in Israel, it doesn't matter, kill them, okay? We get it and that's war. Or you say neither one should be able to do that. But if you tell me, no, Israel gets to murder anyone they like and in anywhere they can bomb any country, they could do any assassination. But the other side, if they do dirty, savage, terrorist, okay, well, okay, you're just admitting you're a liar and a hypocrite, and you have no principles at all. So
the last thing I just want to add that, Ismail Haniyeh was actually one of the leaders who was working on a ceasefire deal with Israel.
Of
and
course,
they killed him.
Yeah, and by the way, that might not be an accident. So I know for in American media, Hamas just means dirty, savage, blood foaming at the mouth, etc. But within Hamas, there's of course a range, there's a spectrum, as there is in the Israeli government. Not everyone is as fascist as Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. There's others that want to do peace in Israel, etc. Right? And Haniyeh was one of the moderates who was trying to get a ceasefire deal. But Netanyahu doesn't want a ceasefire deal, so all of a sudden he assassinates a guy who was trying to get to a ceasefire deal in Tehran. So that way you end the ceasefire deal in Gaza and you possibly provoke a war with Iran. And it doesn't matter because America's gonna fight that war for you. Iran's too big. So that's the sick games that this current Israeli government is playing.
Yeah, and it's also the games they've been playing for decades, is to assassinate and kill the moderates. It's the reason that Netanyahu helped, start and foment and fund what is now Hamas. They love that. They want extremes. They want nobody who wants negotiation because it leads them just down this war path. I wanted to finalize this by sharing some words from Ismail Al-Ghoul, who was one of the Al Jazeera journalists who was murdered by Israel, because he wrote something really beautiful, and it was shared by the managing editor of Jazeera, who put this out on X. He says, "Let me tell you, my friend, I no longer know the taste of sleep. The bodies of children and the screams of the injured and their blood-soaked images never leave my sight. The cries of mothers and the wailing of men who are missing their loved ones never fade my hearing. I can no longer bear the sound of children's voices from beneath the rubble, nor can I forget the energy and the power that reverberates at every moment, turning into a nightmare. It is no longer easy for me to stand before the rows of coffins which are locked and extended, or to see the dead people more than the living who are fighting death beneath their homes, not finding a way out to safety and survival. I am tired, my friend." So rest in peace, Ismail Al-Ghoul. Journalists should not be murdered. That is a war crime, the likes of which I hope one day Israel answers for.
Thanks for watching. If you become a member, you get to watch all this ad-free, except for, of course, this ad. Still, hit the join button below.